Hi there and welcome to I believe it's the 13th official installment of the Sage Running Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to all the Patreon supporters for making this all possible. Thanks to you viewers on YouTube as well as you listeners. You got it on iTunes. We'll have the podcast link up also on the sagerunning.com website as well as maybe my personal blog, sagecandidate.com. But cheers. Hope your February 2017 is off to a great start. I want to do this podcast and I promise we will have more future guests on the show, and we will have co-host Sandy here as well as maybe exclusive stuff with Coach Sandy, because she obviously has a ton of insight, a totally different story from me, as well as a great progression in running and coaching knowledge. And Sandy is a wealth of knowledge and we could learn a lot from her, and so I promise you we'll have more content packed into these podcasts. It's not just going to be me talking about myself, ranting like I will probably today, because I did want to talk about kind of my background, not just in running, but just kind of lifestyle growing up. And the reason I do that, that I'm doing this, is because I think, and everyone has a unique story to share. Everyone that I've met in the sport, everyone that I've met in school and work, everyone has their own story, their own narrative. And I think a lot of big key things in life is being able to relate to other people, and not only people that are very similar to you, but also people that are very different from you, maybe that have opposing views, whether it's political or nutrition, diet, or lifestyle choices, other lifestyle choices, things like that. And being able to kind of see where other people are coming from. That saying, like, you don't know another man or another being until you walk a mile in their shoes. Well, I'm thinking maybe you should run 100 miles in their shoes. And so what you see here, I could provide a framework here so you could see maybe where I'm coming from on my YouTube rants, where I'm coming from a training philosophy, but also kind of a life philosophy, and some lessons I've learned in my relatively inexperienced and short time on this earth. But something that you could see, Sage is biased because of this. Sage, this is where I'm coming from, and this is kind of just a snapshot, so to speak, of my story. And then I think it just provides good perspective to hear someone's background and to know kind of the forces that have shaped them and how maybe they've evolved over time, but also all the influences together. So that's why I'll talk about my background. We'll just go from there. Hopefully this won't be too boring for you guys, but thanks again for tuning in. I'm gonna have a sip of beer real quick. All right, so start off, try not to drag on too much here with my childhood. I grew up in the backwoods of Oregon, and I mean pretty rural, northwest Oregon, the part of Oregon where it rains a lot. Not like Bend, not like Mount Hood, no skiing in the mountains, no gorge trails, things like that. I grew up more in the Coast Range, about an hour inland on the northern side of Oregon. Very temperate climate. In the woods though, the town that I grew up in, technically the population was less than 5,000 people, I think, and that was including the prison that was there. There's a pretty big prison, there's several thousand inmates now probably. I'm not sure what the population now, what it is. It's definitely less than 10,000. It's a very small town, but I grew up in the country. So I grew up in the backwoods of Oregon. My parents actually hand-built the house that I grew up in. Actually designed it and built it themselves. They might have, I think they had maybe some help pouring the cement foundation, but they put together all the studs and the materials, and my dad had some experience as a carpenter building houses, and I think they did their own insulation and plumbing even for the first part of the house that I grew up in. And it was a comfy house. This wasn't like a off the grid cottage. It's a very nice comfy house. And something I really enjoyed, we had over 20 acres of forest around us, big tall Douglas fir trees, over 100 feet tall. So I grew up just running around the forest, playing with my older brother, my friends in the neighborhood, building forts, having fir cone fights, just, running in the creek and hiking and exploring all around. We had some hills on our property as well. And there we would find like bear poop and things like that. There are all sorts of wildlife. Really active environment. And what ended up happening is when it was time to go to school, I did go to school in the local school district for a couple years, but it was a really small school. My dad was a public school teacher, and he actually taught in a couple districts over, more of a larger sized town, larger school. There was a lot more kind of opportunities in the other town, but it was a 45-minute drive from our house because it was 2 districts over. But after second grade, it became clear that my older brother and I could tag along with my dad to go to this public school in the school district that he taught in, and in high school, I guess there were more advanced placement classes in that school. So, and the athletic opportunities also were different, because it was actually a large school division in Oregon, the school district that I ended up going to. So, that's we had this long commute to school, and gosh, it was about 4th grade. I noticed I had some problems with kind of anxiety and panic attacks, I guess is what you describe them now. And every child growing up has some sort of issue going on. Mine wasn't totally really severe or debilitating. This wasn't a struggle. I just say I struggled with it, but it was definitely something that probably wasn't normal for an American kid. But I was really fortunate growing up at that point. I mean, my parents, are very supportive of education. Like I said, my dad was a public school teacher, taught science, and he's retired now. My mom worked part-time in the school district a lot as a student aide, and they were really involved with our education. Education's been a huge thing with my whole family, not just my parents, but my extended family. And actually, if you think of it now, I'm the least educated person in my immediate family. My older brother has a law school degree. My younger sister, who we adopted when I was in 6th grade from China, she has a master's degree. My parents both have master's degrees. I'm the only one who doesn't have a master's degree. But my grandparents were also very influential in always valuing higher education and always having the attitude that you need to learn throughout life and educate yourself and read a lot of books and things like that. So, my parents were always very, very supportive, and they're supportive with other activities. I started playing kind of city park soccer leagues since I was in kindergarten. I was playing in this local league. I was going to soccer practice. My parents threw us in piano lessons. And again, I've shown that clip of my brother playing. We learned on this little keyboard. My brother, I swear, the very first song he learned when he was like 7 years old was Beethoven's Für Elise. And he couldn't play it on the keyboard because the keyboard's not full size even. A couple notes would go off. But he learned Für Elise like instantly. That was like the first song he played, I swear. And I'm, playing chopsticks and other things like that. So I always looked up to my older brother. He's 2.5 years older than me. And tried to follow him through his academic pattern. So coming 4th grade, I have social anxiety, panic attack issues. It was hard. It was hard to go to school. It was hard to even do things like soccer practice. And so my parents and I decided that I, might be better off just being homeschooled for a couple years. And that's the route I took. I don't regret it at all. It was something that I did before I started running, and it was a way that I could explore other learning opportunities. This was 4th and 5th grade for me. I stayed at home, and some of my best friends in the neighborhood were also homeschooled for a lot longer time than I was, and I got to interact with them still. They'd come over and we'd climb trees, climb up 100 feet up in the air in these fir trees around our house, and then build forts and play in the streams. But we'd also go to art class. We did a clay sculpture class. We did painting. My mom would have us bake in the kitchen. We would learn fractions, baking different recipes of cookies and desserts. And I would read poetry. I probably didn't read as many textbooks and history books as I should have, but when you're homeschooled, the state comes in and they make sure you're testing up to grade level, and they make sure you're learning something. And I'd crack open some math textbooks and science textbooks, things like that. I'd do little science experiments too, the old homemade volcano with baking soda, vinegar, things like that. But I was homeschooled for 2 years, and after that 2 years, I was like, well, I'm gonna go back to public school, I'm gonna go back into middle school, and I was able to make that transition. Whereas my brother was just climbing his way up the academic ladder, and these were very average, typical middle schools, I'd say, in the state of Oregon, as far as average public schools go. It was great. I started running in 6th grade, running track at the age of 12, and I was playing soccer still, but by 7th grade I realized I'd quit soccer because the coach said I was horrible with the ball at my feet and I wasn't very coordinated, so I quit soccer in 7th grade and started running in the fall. My middle school didn't have a cross-country program, but I could run unattached in these US track and field events, USATF cross-country meets, open cross-country meets, and just represent my school as my own team by myself. And my parents were all really supportive, driving me around. It's a common theme with this podcast is how much my parents had supported all our endeavors, whether it was music or athletics or academics, and how they created an environment that allowed my older brother and my younger sister and myself to really thrive. And growing up, I never thought, we'll fast forward, I guess, into that. Kind of stayed the same, doing track and cross country from middle school all through high school. And my brother was a great runner on the team. He was a good 5th man for us. He was older. He was a senior when I was a sophomore, but he ran 16:23 for 5K, and that year, my sophomore year, I ran 16:02 for 5K, and we were ranked 4th in the state of Oregon in the large school division. I think we only finished like 7th or 8th at state because we didn't have a good day at the state meet, but we were ranked fairly high, and it was the first time my high school team, Newburgh High School, go Tigers, actually made it to state in like decades. So it was an exciting time. Doing sports in high school was really great, and it helped quell all my social anxiety and panic attacks. I didn't have those as much once I started running. Oh, I feel a sneeze coming on. Sorry, guys. Okay, so yeah, going into high school, academics were always really, I don't want to say a pressure because my parents never put academic pressure on us so much. They just supported us a lot. So, if I had to pull an all-nighter writing a paper, my mom would give me coffee. This was like junior year, senior year of high school. I didn't pull that many all-nighters, but I would stay up late doing homework. I would stay up till 11 p.m., midnight, and we would wake up at 5:30 a.m., 5:45 a.m., because we had to leave by about 6:20, 6:30 a.m. to commute 45 minutes one way to school. And since my dad was a teacher, I had to get there a little early. School started pretty early. 7:40 was like first class in middle school and high school. So, I got less sleep in high school and middle school than I do now, and probably the whole amount of my life. And it was hard. I remember being really, really tired and not having a lot of time to train and run, but academics were always a top focus. And my older brother, he's a super sharp guy. I think if I had to guess his IQ, I'd say it's at least 135. I don't know what genius is, but he's very talented at piano. He's very smart in all sorts of different academic subjects, as well as thinking ability. He got straight A's all through middle school and high school, quite easily. It seemed like he didn't have to do quite as much studying or homework because he would just memorize stuff. He was the type of kid that would he knew all the presidents in order and all the vice presidents when he was in like first grade. That was just U.S. history. He got a 5 on the AP U.S. history test. Whereas for me, it was more of a struggle. I had to really study stuff carefully. I had to reread things. I wasn't great at U.S. history. That was probably my weakest subject. But I still wanted to get straight A's too, and I put that pressure on myself, and it was a decent amount of pressure to do that. And I never got a B between 6th grade and 12th grade graduation, and following in my brother's footsteps. We had several valedictorians at the high school, but we were both valedictorian, and I worked really, really hard academically to be able to pull that off and put a lot of pressure on myself, because I feared getting a B, and I don't think I ever got less than 93%, so I could have slacked off probably a lot more and still scooted by with getting over 90%, which would have been an A-, but I always tried to get, like an A+, I was trying to one up, and that did create a lot of pressure. And it wasn't just in academics, but it was in athletics and running as well, because we were just very competitive people, and I wanted to see how far I could take running in high school. And that was kind of, that kind of made it so, there wasn't a lot of wiggle room with our schedule in high school. It was, I'd have to go, I played in the band, alto saxophone, 6th grade through 12th grade, played the alto saxophone in the band. It was Friday night football games, didn't go to those really, was forced to go to them as a pep band member, the ultimate band geek. But my sport was track. My sport was track and cross country, and being an athlete definitely helped. I never got beat up in high school. I never got shoved into a locker, but it was I wouldn't say it was a normal high school experience, even though it was a very normal public high school. And it was a great community. Seeing teachers in the industry, and seeing how hard they work, and seeing how hard my dad worked as a public school teacher, just gives me more and more respect for the education system in the U.S. There's a long way we have to go in general with education in the U.S., in public schools especially, but I think there's a lot of really great teachers out there that work really, really hard, and they're not appreciated enough. So that's my spiel on public school teachers. And I had a lot of really, really quality teachers in middle school and high school that definitely helped me academically and prepare for college as well. And I hate it when people blame teachers for the lack of kids' educational shortcomings, we might say, especially with math and science in the US. I kind of get a bad rap for that, but I'm going off tangent here. Graduated. It wasn't till senior week of high school graduation that I realized that I really probably was the ultimate class nerd. I was definitely not the smartest person in my class. We had about 400 kids in our graduating class, and I definitely was not the smartest in terms of IQ or SAT score or anything like that. I was nerdy. I studied for the SAT. I prepared hard for the SAT. But I was voted by my peers as the most academic in my high school class, which is basically a kind way of saying you were the class nerd, I think. I don't know. I'm proud of it, but it's also, everyone wants to be most athletic, and that went to some football player, I think, or baseball, basketball. Well, not a basketball. It was probably a football player. I don't even remember. But yeah, anyway, from there, was very, very fortunate to get into, I applied to a lot of colleges basically, and was able to get into Cornell University, which I fell in love with the campus. I went out there on a recruiting trip in the spring. Happened to be a really sunny, nice day in Ithaca, New York. If you know Ithaca, New York, it gets very cold and snowy. It was a nice sunny day. I was like, man, this campus is awesome. The coach, the assistant track coach, distance coach, who would be our head cross-country coach, essentially was the co-founder of letsrun.com, the website where the infamous message board is. But I loved his training philosophy. I loved that, he believed in high mileage training, long-term development. He'd run a 2:23 marathon himself, tried to qualify for the Olympic trials. And his twin brother, this is Robert Rojo Johnson of letsrun.com, his twin brother, Weldon Johnson, Weejo, Was a professional runner who ran 28:03, 28:04 for 10K. Paced Paula Radcliffe to her first world record in the marathon, ran 2:18, 2:19 for the marathon. They believed in me and they saw potential in me, and they said, hey, you might be able to get into Cornell. Cornell's different because it's you have to apply to different schools within the college. So I wanted to be an engineer. I was dead set on being mechanical aerospace engineering, and that's not an easy school to get into. Engineering's we'll put it this way, my math SAT score wasn't stellar, and I believe in the class, my freshman class at Cornell in the School of Engineering, the mode score for the SAT math was 800. It's a perfect score on the math, and I didn't get that. Not even close, actually. But I was way better at math than writing, that's for sure. The verbal score, and this is back in the olden days when the SAT was at 1600. But I somehow was able to get into the College of Engineering at Cornell. And the big thing, I don't want to talk too much about every little detail of my college experience, but the big thing I think that kids don't see and a lot of people don't see is they're like, oh, you went to some private college, or you went to some Ivy League school, or you went to Stanford or something like that, is that, yeah, it's very expensive. I believe tuition's probably over $30,000 a year. But a lot of these schools now, and when I was also a freshman, a lot of these schools provide need-based financial aid. And I was a huge benefactor of that. Because, obviously my family couldn't afford $30,000 a year. And it's need-based financial aid. And there were kids in my class at Cornell Engineering that came from, bad areas of the Bronx of New York City, for example, and certain probably lesser, I want to be politically correct here, lesser affluent communities that basically got full rides to Cornell. And they would if they went to Harvard or Stanford or any Ivy League school or some top-ranked private school that would cost a fortune. If their family made less than $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year, you get enough financial aid in the terms of grants, or at least some forgiving federal loans that make the education affordable. So these schools are not just for the elite and the super rich. I know there was a study that said 60% of my classmates at Cornell, their families were considered on the very wealthy side for the U.S. I think it was, with the family income over $120,000 a year probably, but that's for a family income. And there were some very, very wealthy kids that were attending, and they were probably paying close to full tuition, whereas for me it was a matter of some very generous people and donors that created scholarships, that created grants, that created some federal student loans. I'm still paying student loans for college, but it's not something that would have bankrupted me. And it was something that I always appreciate, that higher education was affordable, and it still is. It's even better now, even for these private schools where the tuition's insanely expensive. If you are poor, or I wasn't poor, I was very middle class, but in terms of US standards, I should say, you get the support that you need, and that's what I'm saying. So look into financial programs if you're in high school, or you're a parent and you're thinking of your kids, how you're going to fund your kids' college education. There is need-based financial aid available to even attend. It was more affordable for me to go to Cornell than it was to go to Oregon State. We'll put it that way. So I feel very fortunate in that regard. And what was unfortunate is that I ended up not being an engineer, and I don't really regret that too much, because I was getting my butt kicked in math. There were kids that came in that had 2 full years of advanced placement calculus in high school before they even got in as a freshman, and we were taking more upper level calculus for engineering, intro to calculus, and I was getting my butt kicked. My GPA was not good my freshman year. I was super stressed out. I wasn't running well. I was running horribly. I gained freshman 20 pounds. All you could eat dining calls, what can I say? So I struggled quite a bit in college until I changed my major. I changed out of mechanical aerospace engineering, and I changed my major 3 different times after that. Finally settled on a BS in ergonomics, or concentration in human factors and ergonomics, but it was in the design department. And after that, things were a lot better in college for me. I like using my creative mind instead of having to do a bunch of really hard math and science, although I did take chemical engineering and physics and all that, biology and a lot of labs. But it's very competitive at these schools, and there's some very sharp individuals out there. It really makes you appreciate the brain power on a college campus or an area of higher education and learning. So, I always remember that, and I was very fortunate to be able to progress in my college running as well. And I won't talk about that too much because I've talked about that in other videos, and people kind of know the background of running progression in college. But I ended up really struggling, getting really homesick freshman year, almost dropping out, to changing my major, getting refreshed, starting to run well, starting to have a better social life in college, and just absolutely loving my time in Ithaca, New York. And it's a beautiful place. We ran on a lot of single track trail, didn't think much of it, ran in a lot of really cold winters, didn't think much of it, and just had fun running indoor track and outdoor track and cross country, and I even ran marathons. But after college, it was like, what am I gonna do? It was 2009, the economy just crashed. Kids that were usually getting really good jobs weren't always getting jobs, and I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to go pro in running, and I was lucky to have a connection from the Olympic trials that I'd already run in 2007 to the Hanson's Brooks Distance Project, which was an Olympic development program out in Michigan. And I had already lined up that kind of sponsorship after graduation. I was going to go live in Michigan, work at the Hanson brothers, or the coaches out there. They live out there, and that's why it's based out there, and run alongside Olympians like Brian Sell, and future Olympians. At the time, Desiree Davila, the top woman on the team, was about to make the Olympics and get second at Boston and things like that. And live in the track house, work in the shoe store, run 140 miles a week, and just try to, peak for the Olympic trials in 2012. And that's exactly what I did for 3 years right out of college. Ran a lot of really hard miles out on the streets just north of Detroit, Michigan, and the winters were cold and rough there as well. But I got to train alongside at a pretty high level, and out of college, given my track times, that was something I was very fortunate to be a part of that experience. And I also worked 20 to 30 hours a week in a shoe store. I'd already had shoe store experience before that, but really taught you to structure your days kind of as a pro or semi-pro runner, and what it took to be on the national class to Olympic development level for road running. And after the 2012 Olympic trials in Houston, I didn't have a great race. I ran 2:18. Was 43rd place there, right in the middle of the field, off my PR of 2:16.52. I was like, I want to do trail ultras. I want to try to run longer distances. Maybe it'll give me more strength for the marathon when I go back to it. So that's when I made this transition to ultras and running longer distances. And it was, I should also say, I guess I wrote a memoir called Running for the Hansons. It's a book. It's available online. This is a plug. It's not well written. I'm not a writer. There's still typos in it. It's very crude. It's what I wrote in my mid-20s. Sorry, the video recording stopped there. It's what I wrote in my mid-20s when I was kind of disillusioned. Just that for you guys there. And yeah, it's Running for the Hansons, kind of a book on that experience. I wrote it while I was in the program. I'm not proud of everything I wrote in it, but it was how I felt at the time, and it was the honest truth. There's some grammatical errors, there's some typos in it still. You get the paperback form though, or the Kindle version on Amazon. But yeah, I gave that up because I wanted to do something different. I was ready for a change in my life. I was 26 years old. I run in 2 Olympic trials. Knew I wasn't gonna make the Olympics probably in the road marathon. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but after you've trained so hard, run up to 150 miles a week, and you only run 216, you're probably not gonna run 210 anytime soon. And that, that's a hard reality, but I liked the idea of doing trails. I saw an ad for like the North Face 50. I was like, wow, this looks like really like fun. I looked into it. Looked into the Chucking-Up 50K, which was my first ultra that winter. And yeah, just jumped right into it. And then I had to actually go home and live with my parents for a couple months because I didn't have anywhere to go in between. But then I was like, I don't want to do that for very long. And so I packed up my bags and I was like, where's one place you can move to in the country where, you could train, you'll like the environment, you could train in the mountains at altitude, you like the beer, the people, the food, the trails. And I was like, well, I'm going to Boulder. Boulder's the Mecca. My parents went to school here. They met here 40 years ago, and they're not that old. Yeah, they are. Yeah, 40 years ago. And I have some relatives in Denver, so I was, living at my grandpa's house in Denver. Didn't have a place to stay in Boulder. I had everything in Big Red, my old 97 RAV4, and didn't have a job lined up. I had 0 sponsors, and this was 5 years ago when I came to Boulder. No apartment, no job, no sponsors, just a dream to run. All my belongings in my car. Didn't have that much stuff. Now I got too much stuff. And yeah, I was able to weave my way into the running community. I entered the Mount Washington Road Race, which was the US Mountain Running Champs that summer in June. And I said, if you don't win this race and win $1,500, you won't be able to pay rent for 2 months in Boulder, because rent in Boulder is not cheap. It's probably on the more expensive side. And I went out and I had to win. And so I won that and got the $1,500 in cash prize money for cracking an hour and winning. Made the US mountain running team to go to Italy that fall. And right after that, I entered the White River 50 mile, and I was like, well, get some prize money here, run 50 miles as hard as you can. And that was the dream, but I still didn't have any sponsors. I still didn't have a big stream of income. I was still throwing myself into social media, throwing myself into the YouTube channel, still am, to try to brand myself and to create some content, I guess, and attract the attention of sponsors, but none were biting. And so then I was desperate. My rent money was running out, rent and food money and gas money, I should say. No travel budget, trying to get to these races and trying to win prize money here and there. Buying my own shoes, using used shoes like most people, of course. And yeah, I needed a job, so I started applying for a bunch of jobs. And I had worked all throughout college at minimum wage jobs. I worked as part of my federal work study in college at Cornell. I worked in a gym, maybe only 10 or 15 hours a week, but I scooped ice cream at Cold Stone Ice Cream during my time off in college. I worked as a videographer briefly, also editing videos of some sports events, things like that. But mainly worked in the gym, and having experience working in shoe stores, also at Hanson's Brooks for over 3 years, fitting shoes on people, especially run shop experience. I started applying to jobs all over Boulder, and I was overqualified and underqualified for a lot of them. I applied at this restaurant to be a waiter, and they wouldn't let me. They said I wasn't qualified enough, but I was. Of course, your education, you're overqualified. You have an Ivy League degree. And you're trying to wait tables, but it's too competitive to get a job at Starbucks. And I love coffee, but no barista experience, you're gone, right? And so I was like, man, I really need a job. I'm gonna start coaching, but I didn't have enough coaching clients at the time. And so I eventually got a job at I won't name names. It was a certain cell phone holder cell phone cover company based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. 1 hour commute to get paid a little bit over the US minimum wage at the time to work in customer service with a phone thing on your head, the old headset, and the phone calls coming in. You talk to a customer and within 10 seconds you'd be guaranteed the phone would ring again, and you talk to another customer and you'd have to send several hundred emails a day during a work shift. So I was making that commute, trying to run. That didn't last long, but it paid the bills. It got me through the summer that fall, and it got me into the point where I got my first sponsorship. And I'll always be thankful for that. It's a matter of sometimes luck, sometimes networking, connections, but also just kind of a testament, I think, to the support of the running community. And ever since then, the last 4.5 years, I've been able to build up some more sponsors and do what I do now because of the support of the sponsors. Big plug for Hoka 11, who's I've been with this is my 4th year now with Hoka. But all the other sponsors that make this really possible, and people like you, all the ultra running community, distance running, marathon, road running community that's really made this possible because you guys buy products from my sponsors, and you just following me online has been very helpful. It's also a lot of fun. I like to interact with you guys through these different mediums, through podcast videos, through the YouTube videos, the YouTube channel, through maybe even blog posts sometimes, although I'm not much of a writer. And yeah, just, Instagram, Twitter, and it's been a journey, and it's something that I don't take for granted at all, but it's something that's been made possible. When I look back, and I'm going to summarize this now, when I look back on it all now, it came out of the support of my immediate family, my parents, the community I grew up in, my friends, and now the wider running community, international running community. You succeed in life, you reach a lot of your goals, I should say, in life, and I've had a lot of dreams come true. I've been very fortunate for that, but it's because of the effort of other people. It's because of other people giving you a break or supporting you kind of directly or indirectly. But it's like that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, when I look back and I reflect on these past 3 decades, I see that more and more now, and I'm still fairly young and naive and probably really immature for my age, but the support of all these people along the way is what makes it possible. A lot of people like to talk about talent and just sheer luck, but I don't see it as that so much as, wow, like this person helped you do this, and this person gave you the opportunity and opened a door for you. And so you always have to reflect back on that and say, there were a lot of efforts that went into having this type of race, or having this type of sponsorship, or having this type of lifestyle, or being able to afford this type of camera, or things like that, or just having an attitude of, I need to go out and train every day and make the most of what's been given to me and what opportunities I have, because it's something you can't take for granted, and I don't take any of this for granted at all. So I guess I'm kind of rambling here. I don't know where I'm going with this exactly, but yeah, thank you guys. Thanks to the Patreon supporters, thanks to all my sponsors, thank you to my parents for always believing in me and still supporting my running, supporting all my dreams. I know that's very rare. Like, in terms of financials, I wasn't super rich or wealthy growing up compared to other Americans. Compared to most of the world, we were very affluent. But it wasn't a super financially rich environment, but what I got from my parents in terms of support and interest in my activities and endeavors and education, that was way, way above average. That was, that's something that's priceless, really. So, and the support of my friends and the support of the running community, it's been like phenomenally, something that's it gives me faith in humanity. My car just got crumpled from a hit and run the other day, and you lose faith in humanity when shitty things like that kind of happen, or when people steal from you, or there's criminals, or there's violence, or there's all these atrocities going on all around the world. But when good things happen, that's good things that sometimes like a lot of people probably take for granted, that should restore your faith in humanity. That should be something that's positive, that you could really focus on and grow from, and use that momentum to further your life and to further the experience of life through others. Because we're all on the same team here. I mean, we're all trying to get through life and have fun and be healthy, and we should support each other. And even though there's competition in business, there's competition in races, there's competition for scarce resources and money, you can't let that blind you too much, is what I guess I'm saying. But yeah, I'm getting all off topic here. I'm going to close up this podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for watching online. If you're watching the YouTube video, sorry this is a crazy rant. It's gone on way too long, but I am really thankful for your support. We'll get back to more regular training-focused podcasts, as well as having guests on the show, like I said. Co-host Sandy, Coach Sandy Nypaver. She's on Instagram and Twitter now, at Sandy Nypaver. Check it out. As well as, thanks for following me on subscribing on YouTube, watching all these videos, sharing, thumbs up, checking out our new training plans and updates at sagerunning.com. And big thanks to the Patreon supporters and my sponsors, and my parents, of course, for making this all possible. But really appreciate all your support. Hope your running's going well, and stay tuned for more Sage Running podcasts.